This is about discovering who or what you actually are. And who or what you actually are cannot be discovered by the mind. It cannot be discovered by the senses or the body. The sense organs are parts of the body, we can say. For most seekers, those are the instruments that are being used on their search, whether it's reading texts or thinking about things, observing their thoughts, observing their feelings. And what you actually are is deeper than all of these things. Because what we are is actually the supreme, the divine, the ultimate, that which always is, that which is infinite, that which is glorious, that which is ever blissful. The question, who am I, can draw our spiritual sense to ourselves, what we actually are.
Hello, Tom.
Hello, Ilona.
So great to meet you. I have seen your posts and your presence on Facebook for years now. So it's really nice to talk to you finally.
Oh, thank you so much. It's very kind of you to say. I'm glad you've enjoyed what I've been sharing there.
Mm. And today I'm talking to Tom Das, and he's a teacher. He holds satsangs, he holds group meetings, works one-on-one with anyone and everyone who finds him in the search for freedom. And what I like about Tom and his posts on Facebook is that he shares a lot about Ramana Maharshi, his pointings, bringing awareness to the true teachings. And so I hope this is going to be helpful for everyone who joins into this podcast, into this conversation, because these days there's so much information. So many people are talking and talking and talking, and it seems like never ending. But time to time, it's good to come back to the source.
I agree. And I hope it's helpful too.
Okay, before we get into all this, I ask every guest, and I'm going to ask you, awakening, what's your definition? What does that mean to you?
Awakening.
Mm,
Well, I tend not to use that word very much.
whichever
I know,
word you use.
sure. Well, just because you asked about awakening, I mean, awakening literally means waking up, right? Waking up from sleep, waking up from dream. And I don't use that word very much, but it means, for me, it means when someone is awakened to a deeper, more profound, maybe a deeper way of living or a deeper aspect of life. So a shift outside the everyday common sense paradigm of living, the materialistic paradigm. Whatever that is, it can take so many different forms, but it's a moment of shift, maybe a moment of clarity. For some, it can be a moment of calamity. But it's realizing that, oh, the way I've been living my life, the way I've been thinking about my life, there's a different way. So it can happen in many different ways. It doesn't have to be what I consider awakening. It could be what you can become awake to so many different things. But I guess we're talking about spirituality, or I call it spirituality. I don't know what you call it. I don't know what to call it sometimes. But that's what awakening is for me. And it's not the same as what I would call self-realization.
Aha. And what's the self-realization and how is that different?
So awakening is becoming aware of something or seeing something or feeling something that you weren't previously aware of. You weren't previously perceiving or feeling or seeing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is for me in the way I define the word. And self-realization is something that it's quite different and it's not for it's not for everyone, meaning not everyone is wanting this. This is not what everybody is going for consciously.
Right.
I would say unconsciously, this is what we're all going for. We all want self-realization, what I call self-realization. You can call it what you like. It can be called enlightenment, it can be called liberation. And the way I first came, one of the simplest ways of conceiving of this, that I came across when I was younger, was the way the Buddha phrased it. And he said, it's the cessation of all suffering. And it was very interesting the way he defined suffering. And he defined it in many different ways. But he defined it in a very peculiar way that I didn't understand. I understood what I thought was suffering. I understood what
Uh-huh.
I thought suffering meant. So I thought the end of suffering, that sounds great. That's what I want. So that's self-realization, that's liberation. That's what it promises. But Buddha said, birth is suffering. I didn't understand what that meant. I read the words. Birth is suffering. What else did he say? Growing old is suffering. Illness is suffering. Death is suffering. So I didn't really understand what that meant when I read it when I was much
Mhm.
younger. But liberation, freedom is to say it's the on a conceptually it's the idea that suffering has a cause, and if that cause is removed, it can be ended. Just like a disease. A disease might have a cause, like a virus or a bacteria or something. And if you treat or remove or destroy that virus or bacteria or that cause, whatever that cause is, then the disease is eradicated and that suffering isn't necessary. So
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for making that distinction.
that's the way I think about it. You know,
Well,
obviously everyone uses words and everyone has their own relationship with words, right? And uses words in a different way.
yes, that's why I feel I have to ask every guest what is awakening, because sometimes people bring different ideas and we are talking about something together,
Exactly.
then it's good to know.
I agree. I really I when I was younger, I always wanted to understand how what people meant by the words they were using, because otherwise, how can you communicate effectively? You know, sometimes we can't define things clearly, and that's fine too. And there can be actually greater communication when words are not clearly defined. And this is one of the powers of poetry and things like this. But sometimes clarity of definition is very good for clear communication, I think.
Precisely.
Precisely, yes.
Well, the show is primarily for seekers, seekers who are looking for awakening, self-realization, truth, enlightenment, liberation, whichever words they want to use. And yeah, and I would like to invite you to discuss about, what are the biggest points of these seekers? What are they really looking for? And maybe they don't even know that they're looking for. And yeah, let's start from there.
What are the biggest points of the seekers?
Pain points.
Pains of,
Yes, because you're meeting them every day. See, like me, I meet seekers every day.
yeah. So you're asking me what's the challenges that I see in
Yeah,
seekers the most?
yeah, yeah.
Um, it's funny because I don't. Okay, let me try and answer. It's usually things that I find in the seekers that I come across that is the biggest hurdle for them. It are their own ideas about what liberation is and what spirituality is and what spiritual practice is, what they think they don't know. These aren't, in my experience, the biggest hurdles. Um, I don't think I'm the most popular spiritual teacher in the world. So often people discover me. I mean, some people, I'm the first spiritual teacher they discover or they come across. But often people have been seeking, searching for years, sometimes decades, and seen lots, all the more popular teachers or and things like this, before they come to me. So many of them have accumulated all these ideas and spiritual concepts. So maybe that's why that's the sort of first thing that comes to mind. I
Hmm.
think that's the one of the biggest hurdles. There are many others as well. Um, One of the other hurdles people have that I come across is they haven't figured out how to integrate their daily life with their spiritual practice. So that leads to a lot of confusion and suffering, whether that's um, in their relationships with their family, that maybe their parents, their children, their spouses, their partners, or at work, in the workplace, or their finances, their relationship with money, or um, their relationship with their own habits, their own addictions, or habitual tendencies. They haven't people many seekers I come across haven't figured out sort of the basic rules of how to live a relatively successful life in the world on these different domains. And that can often cause a lot of stress, anxiety, and impede their spiritual progress. And again, many people have wrong ideas, or maybe not wrong ideas, but ideas that are no longer helpful to them now. They may have been helpful to them earlier, but those same ideas are now holding them back again. So it's just about often showing them a different way, a different understanding. That's what I think.
Yeah.
The reason I have difficulty answering the question is because whenever I meet a seeker, someone who's looking for assistance from me, it's so different every time. I maybe it's the same for you as well. Um, but I just there's I work intuitively essentially.
Mhm.
So there's an intuition, an intuitive connection. Um, if it works, there's an intuitive connection, and that's what guides me really. And so it's very different for everyone, I think. The specifics
Yeah,
and the specifics are
specifics.
often very important.
Right. Oh,
So
but there are these
what
general tendencies, like you said, that all these
yeah,
conceptual baggage. I call it expectations.
yeah,
Everyone has expectations, and these are sometimes very difficult to let go because the mind
mm,
has a picture how it should be, what this awakening life should be, and how you should behave or feel, especially that there shouldn't be any thoughts anymore and things like that. People come in with all these ideas.
absolutely right. Yeah,
Well, it's great that there are people like you and others out there who help them to remove all these ideas and put them on the side, or
yeah,
really just
yeah,
break through and start looking into the essence.
yeah. And sometimes it's not about, I mean, ultimately it's about removing the ideas, but sometimes it's about giving ideas, Sometimes ideas can be very helpful. And sometimes people sort of look down on certain types of ideas, but those are the ideas that can be very helpful. For example, faith or belief in a deity.
Mm-hmm.
If you're interested in things like non-duality, which is, what I share essentially, um, you might look down on the idea of a dualistic path where you're devoted to a god or a guru or something like this. But for many people that can be incredibly helpful, depending where they are in their journey and what kind of personality or what kind of person they are. So sometimes people are stifling themselves. Often people are stifling, they're not following actually their own path within them, which will naturally take them to the divine. So sometimes a lot of what I do is just help people find what their heart is already telling them to do, and just bring them back to what their heart's already telling them to do. Their heart might be saying, set up an altar in your living room with a picture of Jesus and pray to Jesus every morning or something. That might be what they want to do inside.
Hmm. Hmm.
But because they've read teachings that say something different, they've suppressed, they've rationalized away that because it sounds to them so stupid or so dualistic or illogical, they suppress it. But actually, there might be a role for something like that in someone's journey. And that can be really beautiful when between myself and the seeker, we discover what that thing is. You know, I had this moment yesterday with someone and they just between the two of us, it was mainly them to be honest, but I'm taking a little bit of credit. I thought I'd take a little, but they figured out I think through the conversations they got permission, they felt they had permission to explore other things, and they found something that's just improved their life massively. It's not a liberating thing. It's not led to liberation, but it's just massively improved their life, you know. And it's different for everyone, you know.
Mm. It's interesting you mentioned permission,
Mm.
because sometimes that's all it takes, is like giving yourself permission to be yourself,
Yes, exactly.
to follow your own path,
That's it. Yeah.
like full permission to enjoy life. Sometimes
Yeah.
I get this for people to repeat 3 times. I say, okay, give yourself permission to enjoy life and follow your own
Yeah.
path.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something. That's something.
I,
Permission.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, in a way, the entire teaching is about being yourself, learning to be what you actually are, being yourself.
Sweet.
That's that's one way of putting it, at least.
Yeah. Right. So let's talk about Ramana.
Ramana.
I
Yes.
know you love his teachings. I also love his teachings. So direct. And I read his book, first book, not so long ago, maybe a few years ago. And it was such a joy to read it,
His
because it
first
wasn't
book.
not the first book I read, only a few
Ah,
years ago.
got you.
I knew Ramana, knew some of quotes, but I never sat down and read a book. So maybe
Yeah.
5, 6 years ago, I read the first one. And what was delightful for me, it wasn't the words I was reading, but there was some joy or some kind of energetic thing going on out of these pages. That was
Mm.
a live book. It
Yes.
wasn't
Yes.
the words that were reaching me, but I would just open the page on my iPad and I was just like, oh, really feel that something coming out through these words.
Yeah. That's lovely. That's wonderful. Yeah, I meet many people. Well, I sometimes meet people who tell me, "Oh, I know Ramana's teachings. I know Ramana's teachings. I know Ramana's teachings already, you know." And I said, "Oh, have you read any of the things he's written?" And they said, "Oh, he's written things? I thought his teachings were silent teachings." And I said, "Oh, yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. You know, he did say the highest teachings are in silence, but he also wrote things." They said, "Oh, right." And they said, "Oh, I don't want to read his things. You know, his teachings are in silence. I don't want to read it." And so that's fine, you know, if that's what people want to do, that's fine. But yeah, reading his he wrote several different texts that make the spiritual path really clear, super clear, and very simple.
They want to share
So
that.
do I want to share that?
Yes, like
Yeah,
just maybe
sure,
somebody
yeah,
doesn't know Ramana and listen in.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, it's in again. So there's a text called Upadesha Saram, and here like the words can sometimes put people off because they're Sanskrit or foreign or Tamil foreign language words. Upadesha Saram means Upadesha means spiritual teaching or spiritual instruction, or it just means instruction, but it usually means spiritual instruction, Upadesha. And Saram means the essence.
Mm.
Um, So it means the essential instruction or the essence of the spiritual teaching. And it's just 30 verses long. And each verse is only a few lines. So, and it's very easy to read. And it just summarizes the entire spiritual journey for a seeker in a very practical way that, but it's very concise. You know how you said that, did you say it was a living book? You know,
Hmm.
these teachings, what I found, it's quite mysterious. I've never come across another teaching in the words like this. But when you're at a, let's say, a lower stage of seeking, when you're first starting, you read the teachings will speak to you in one way. But as you start to gain more and more insight and more understanding, and you start to penetrate the teachings more deeply, the same texts, the same 30 verses that you're reading, for example, they become deeper. The same things you thought you understood the verses before, and now those same verses are saying something even deeper, more profound. So the texts kind of grow with you. And it's because of this sort of peculiar way the texts are worded and written. It has got quite an unusual quality I've not come across in any other spiritual writing before.
Oh, wow.
You'll see this in his text, Who Am I?
Hmm.
Which is just like 10 or 12 pages long. And it summarizes, again, pretty much everything you need to know for the spiritual journey in these 10, 12 pages. And when I first read it, I thought this is written in a really strange way. It doesn't seem super logical. There is logic to it. And there are a few things that are thrown in there. I'm thinking, why is that in there? That doesn't need to be in there. You know, that's not an essential spiritual teaching. And then lo and behold, you see all these teachings have value. They have a point, and they all sort of come together and they grow with you. And there's sort of verses in the text or sentences in the text you might not notice the first time you read it. You know, your eye just skims over it. And then later on, like a year later or some time later, that sentence leaps out to you. Oh my gosh, that was there the whole time. It said something so profound. I never saw it before. And many people I've come across have had this experience with
Yeah.
his writings. You know, they grow with you. It's very magical, peculiar, wonderful quality. And it means that no matter where you are in the journey, you can resonate with the teaching on some level. And then as your understanding becomes more refined, you know, as you spiritually mature, let's say, um, the deeper teachings come out at you in the same 10 pages or the same 30 verses.
Sounds
Have you got
mystic. No, I haven't. So I'm very curious now. Can we put a link to this text under our
the link?
video?
The,
Yeah. You have these links. You have the text somewhere.
yeah. Oh
We can
yeah, I've
put a
got the
link.
yeah, definitely. You'll find them all on my website, which is tomdas.com.
Right. So we'll put the link specifically to this text. And so
Yeah.
maybe people who are listening and watching can share their experience with them.
Yeah, I would love to do that. Yes.
Great.
Yeah,
It
I'll
sounds
do that.
like in these 10 verses, there is some very compressed information in many different dimensions. So you
Yes.
download it into your brain and then it unpacks or installs the software that is
That's true.
running
Yes.
deeper and deeper and deeper. Ah,
Yes, that's true. That's right. In fact, Upadesha Saram, this 30 verse text, there's a story I heard where I call Ramana, I often call him Bhagawan. Bhagawan is a word that means beloved. It also implies God or the divine. So I call him Bhagawan because I consider Bhagawan to be my guru, my teacher. So there's a story where Bhagawan was teaching young children. I don't know how old they were, maybe like 6 or 7 years old. He was teaching to memorize these 30 verses. And it's written in quite terse language, quite difficult to understand. You know, it's not easy to access for a child.
mhm.
So some adults around were saying, why are you bothering to teach these children these things? They're not interested, they don't understand. And Bhagavan said, I know they don't understand, but if they learn it now, it will fructify later. It will bear fruit later on. They understand the teachings now, then later on when they're older, because they've memorized it.
Hmm.
And this is true with many spiritual traditions, right? You know, things we learn as a kid about maybe we were brought up in some kind of religious culture. And we don't really care about it when you're like 6 or 7. You just want to play with your friends or whatever you want to do. But when you get older, because you've learned those teachings, that wisdom that you've been taught as a child can now come out and support you when it's needed, hopefully. I mean,
That's very
sometimes it can do the opposite. Sometimes it can traumatize you. But the way we're brought up. But ideally, that's what can happen as well.
mm, sounds very deep.
I think it's like as you say, it's a technology. It's a wonderful technology. Um, these teachings, they can go into you and they have an effect on you, like a medicine, like an
Hmm.
antidote. You know, maybe to an antidote to a poison you might not even realize you have.
Right.
So you think, I don't need that. I don't need that.
Like antivirus for all
Yeah,
the conditioning patterns and all these
yeah,
painful beliefs.
yeah. And it works on different levels, as you say. Some of it works on a verbal and conceptual level. And that's usually how seekers first come to the teaching.
Hmm.
But eventually we have to go to much deeper, subtle levels where it's in silence and the more subtle vibrational aspects of the teaching, more energetic aspects of the teaching. And we often flip between them, sometimes it'll be the energy, sometimes it'll be the concepts, you know.
Yeah,
But these teachings work on all
simultaneously.
those levels. Yeah.
Yeah, because we are multi-dimensional beings, so not just the mind or emotions or body or spirit. I don't know. That's what we know, like four things: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. But what else is there? We don't know. Yes, there is silence, but what else is there?
What do you think?
I don't know. That's what I think. I don't
Okay.
know. I like that mystery. I like not to put something like that into concepts. Some
Yeah.
some things, we feel or we know, they're so deep that they don't need words. When they become wrapped up in words, they kind of lose their brilliance.
Hmm. Yeah. I hear you. Another thing I would like to say though is when I first read Ramana's teachings, um, the very first time I came across Ramana's teachings, I rejected them. I just thought it was a load of rubbish. I thought it didn't make sense. I could see problems with the logic. So I just dismissed it. And I was interested in more Buddhist style teachings at that time
Ah,
because they made more sense to my more analytical mind. The way the Buddhist teachings I was reading, at least, the way they were presented. And then a couple of years later, I was very attracted to Ramana again. And I started to feel a huge amount of love and affection for him in my heart. And I started reading about his life, and it had a profound effect on me. And again, I found myself um, compulsively, almost not compulsively. I found myself magnetically drawn to him. You know, I just found myself very drawn to him. That's what I'm
mm-hmm,
trying to say.
mm-hmm.
And so I started to read some of his teachings, and I still didn't like them. I still didn't like them for many years. I didn't like. It wasn't. I actually thought the truth is what I thought is that I could explain it better than Bhagwan could.
Oh wow,
So
congratulations.
I thought I had a deeper understanding,
Yeah.
or not a deeper understanding. I just thought I knew what he was trying to say, and he wasn't saying it very well. And so whenever I read it, I didn't quite like what he'd written, and I'd reformulate it in my own mind so it made sense to me. I didn't know at the time I was distorting the teaching,
Mm-hmm.
but I felt a huge love for him and huge attraction to him.
How interesting. On one side there was like this magnetic pull, and on the other side it was just rejecting
Yeah,
the
yeah.
way
My intellect,
he said, uh-huh.
yeah. And it was only many years later I came to understand the beauty of the actual conceptual side of the written teachings, the verbal teachings. I could I didn't completely dismiss the written teachings. There are aspects of it I liked, and there are
Hmm.
aspects of it I thought, not sure about that. And there are other aspects I probably just didn't understand, you know. But I was drawn to a sense of him. So I just wanted to share that as well because I don't know if other people when they first I think I think my experience is quite unusual because most people I come across, as soon as they see him or something, they have this profound love or connection with him. You know, that's what people say to me. Oh, I was in a bookstore, I was looking for a romantic comedy novel, and then Who Am I by Bhagwan just fell out of the bookshelf and I saw his face and I knew he was the one. That it wasn't like that for
Wow.
me.
No,
That
it's not like
often
for
see
me
people
either.
have these dramatic stories, right?
Uh-huh.
Everything falls into place. But it wasn't like that for me at all, you know. So I just wanted to share that as well. In case someone reads his teachings and thinks, you know,
But the seed is in. It needs time to germinate.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Well, one of the most famous or well-known pointers is Who Am I? The inquiry
Mm.
of Who Am I? Can we talk about that? How do you teach
Yeah.
that or anything to say?
Who am I? Yeah. Well, one way you can phrase the teachings verbally is we can say this is about discovering who or what you actually are. And who or what you actually are cannot be discovered by the mind. It cannot be discovered by the senses or the body. The sense organs are parts of the body, we can say. And it cannot be discovered by the mind. Now, for most seekers, those are the instruments that are being used on their search, whether it's reading texts or thinking about things, observing their thoughts, observing their feelings, engaging with with objects, whether it's gross objects in the world, objects on the level of the body, or subtle objects in the mind, the feelings, or energies or experiences. These are all gross and subtle objects, I would say.
Mhm.
And what you actually are is deeper than all of these things. Now, because what we are is actually the supreme, the divine, the ultimate, that which always is, that which is infinite, that which is glorious, that which is ever blissful. Because this is actually our nature, we actually, from the point of view of being a seeker, there's a part of a seeker that always knows this. There's a part of a seeker that's always in touch with that. And from the point of view of being a seeker, it's the innermost essential aspects of that seeker, that that which never changes in that seeker is that truth. The question is a question. The question, who am I, can draw, it's mysterious. So words can't accurately describe it. I'm just going to use words, they're not completely accurate. The question, who am I, can draw our spiritual sense to ourselves, what we actually are, in a way that if I say, what is that? Or what is that? What is that object? What is that object? And I point to a car or a tree, you can look at that tree using your eyes, or you can maybe feel the car with your fingers, with your hand. So you can discover through the body, through the mind, through the senses. But when I say, who am I? To know yourself doesn't require, actually, we will discover, it doesn't require the body or the mind. It knows itself, poetically speaking, by itself, through itself. So the question, who am I, can introvert the mind. It can turn the mind away from the sense objects, away from the body, the mind, the world, the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, and discover itself as it actually is. And this is what is intimated and hinted at in this exploration, in this question, this inquiry, who am I, is an intuitive, spontaneous discovery of what you are, which is that which everyone is actually looking for. So that's one way of saying it.
Yeah. Again, it's some mysterious technology.
Exactly.
The
It is.
question is supposed to lead one to the silence.
Yeah, well, silence, when Bhagavan says silence,
Mhm.
he's talking about your true, it's another name for your true nature. So it's to lead you to yourself. The silence means the self. It doesn't just mean an empty mind. It means self-discovery. It means when your fictional identity of being a body mind is no longer there. And he explains this in the text, Who Am I? If you read Who Am I, he defines what silence is, not in a logical, coherent way, but it's the definitions there in the
Mhm.
text.
Mhm.
If you look for it, you'll find it. If you don't look for it, you can easily miss it. And everything I've just said is also written in that text, Who Am I? But
Thank you so
again,
much for
oh,
sharing.
oh, you're so welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, like there is this presence that is always here, ground of being, natural state, the self with a capital S. And in that, there's this arising mind with all its display, with all its, you know, imaginations. It's flickering here. And the
Mhm.
question, who am I? And I was like,
Yes, that's it. I love that. Yes, that's it. In fact, Bhagavan says that as well in Who Am I? And he does this in Who Am I? But obviously he can't do it with his hands. Is this podcast audio only for some people as well? Will they understand, or is this video for everyone?
there is video and audio.
Because you're because for the listeners, when we what's happened is Ilona's putting her hands up like almost like a sprout or a plant emerging from the soil and then becoming like the branches of a tree. That's the way, or a flower opening. And then she's withdrawing her hands together back down into the soil or into itself. And Pokemon gives us this imagery in a different way. He uses a completely different metaphor, but it's the same thing. He says, and um, this is a traditional imagery. You find it in the Vedas, in the
Mhm.
Upanishads as well. So he didn't invent it, but he says it's like the spider. He said it's like the spider emits a web and then withdraws it back into itself again. Now, I don't know if spiders actually do that. I don't know if spiders actually create a web and then withdraw the web back into themselves again. Maybe some
They
spiders
eat
do.
it. They eat it.
Oh,
They
do that?
eat it and
Oh, so
reuse the glue.
is it?
Yeah.
Ah, there you go.
They build a
See, I
spider
was
web,
imagining.
and then when it gets broken, when it's
There you go.
something happens, it eats it back
I didn't know that.
to make it fresh.
So it makes even more sense of the analogy.
Mm. Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
used to live in England, and there were lots of spiders. We used to
Well,
have
now
some in the
now you're putting me to
balcony.
shame because I live in England and I don't know this about spiders. I mean, apparently I should know about spiders if I live in England. So now, you know,
There are lots of them. Where I live here, there are no spider webs.
where are you?
I'm in Mauritius,
And
the
there are no
island.
spiders there. They didn't make it across the Indian Ocean.
There are spiders. There are some quite big spiders like this, but they live in a house, but they have cats, they catch them. But they don't make spider webs. I never ever walked outside and a spider web went on my face. Never. And there are some little tiny ones, jumping spiders. They make, I don't know. I never seen a spider web. I saw one in the garden, but it's like nothing at all like in England.
I never thought of that. I never thought of that because I always think of the UK as being a country where there are not many bugs, because you don't really get bitten by things, and there are not many dangerous things like poisonous spiders. So,
Mm-hmm.
but you're right, there are spider webs. I've got on one of my gates where I live. If my neighbors ever see me opening the gate, what I do, I have to open this gate to put the rubbish out once a week, the
Uh-huh.
trash. So I open the gate and I do this with my hand as I
Right.
open the gate because if I realized when I first moved here, if I just walk through that gate, because I open it once a week to put the rubbish out typically. If I don't do that and I will just walk through, I get all these cobwebs in my face. So now I always think if anyone ever sees me, they think, what is that guy doing? Because I open the gate and I do this as I walk out, just to make sure that the web
Uh-huh.
doesn't go over my anyway. But Bhagawan uses back to the teaching, right?
Right.
Um, Bhagawan uses this analogy of just as the spider emits the web and withdraws it into itself, we create, and this is a very weird teaching. And again, people miss this. I missed this the first time I read this text. The first probably, 20 times I read Who Am I? I missed this. But if you read it, you'll see this is what he's saying. Or, your viewers can put in
Mm-hmm.
the comments
Mm-hmm.
what they think, if there are comments. Uh, he says, we emit the body, the mind, and the world.
Right.
And then we withdraw that back into ourselves again later. So what he's saying is you are the creator. You are the creator, the sustainer, the destroyer, and you are that which is before creation and that which is during creation and that which is after creation. That is your actual identity.
Mm.
So it's quite an extreme radical teaching in some ways. But this is the analogy he gives us in Who Am I?
Well, it kind of reminds me, every day we have waking experience, dream experience, deep sleep, experience of nothing. And everything is just comes up online, goes back
That's right.
to nothing.
That's
Every
it.
day.
That's right. Yeah. That nothing, Bhagavan calls it the self.
Mm-hmm.
He says that's what you actually are. From the point of view of the mind, it seems like nothing.
You mean the deep sleep nothing?
Yeah. From the point of view of the mind, because the mind can't perceive the self is infinitely more subtle than the mind. So the mind, being coarse, cannot, relatively coarse compared to the self, cannot perceive it. So from the mind's point, when we think about deep sleep, we go, oh, it's nothing. Many people in our societies think that sleep's a waste of time. They'll just think of it as something you just got to do, and it gets in the way of actual, real, productive life, you know. And but Pokemon says no, deep sleep, there's a treasure there. There's a treasure there. We see the same teachings in the Upanishads. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, we see this teaching. In the Mandukya Upanishad, we see this teaching too, about deep sleep being a treasure, being where our self is. It's a great clue. And right at the beginning of Who Am I, Bhagavan has written an introductory paragraph also mentioning this treasure of deep sleep. For the mind, it seems like that's nothing. That's just a blank. It's a zero. But actually, for the realized, that is the true waking state. For the ignorant, that's sleep. That's ignorance. That's knowing nothing. Ignorance means not knowing or knowing nothing,
Right.
or not knowing. And so deep sleep is a state of ignorance because you don't know anything in deep sleep. But what Bhagavan says for the jnani, which means the liberated person, liberated being, that is knowledge. That is pure gold. He doesn't literally say pure gold. I'm saying that, but that is what he says. He says it's a jewel, it's a treasure. It's quite funny if you think about it. If you think, if you're the devil and you wanted to hide the greatest treasure, which is the self, where would you hide it when no one would find it?
And when obvious.
Yeah. So we could metaphorically say the devil has hidden the self in ourself as deep sleep,
Oh, wow. Hmm.
because that's the one place that is totally uninteresting. We like to explore the chakras, the world, travel the world, go to the Himalayas, go to this place, go to that place. We like to, explore physical phenomena, mental phenomena. We even like to analyze our dreams and talk about our dreams and dream analysis. But how many of us want to discover the truth of deep sleep? It's like, well, that's boring. Sleep's boring. Sleep, I think. This is the way some people think, right? But Bhagavan said, if we go into deep sleep consciously, that is self-realization. And again, this is an ancient teaching. It's called Jagrat Shushupti. Jagrat means the waking state. Shushupti means the deep sleep state where there's no dream, no experience of the waking state or the dream state. So Jagrat Shushupti means the waking sleep, waking sleep. And Bhagavan says, if we can go into, people fall into sleep unconsciously, they lose consciousness, they fall asleep, it's a blank. But if you can go into deep sleep consciously, retain your awareness, you discover that which is prior to the entire manifested universe, your original face, the source. Source, literally. Source means that which was there before creation. The source of creation is there before creation. You discover it through going into deep sleep, consciously. Jagrat Sushupti.
Do you have experience of that?
Yes, I do. Yeah. That's why I can share about it. Because if you don't have that experience, in fact, everyone actually has that experience, but people are not conscious of it because everyone has the experience of deep sleep.
Sure.
But I know that's not what you're asking. But we all have the experience of it actually. But yes, I do have that experience. That's why I can talk about it. But when I say it like that, it might make me out to sound special. I don't want to sound special. I want to empower other people who are coming to me, and I want them to feel like everything I claim they can also have for themselves. And that not only can they have, they already have. But if this is the same thing as who am I,
Hmm.
phrased differently.
So that can be experienced with eyes open.
Well, it goes beyond the body, right?
Right.
So the consciousness of the body actually disappears. But the other people looking at you, they might see you having your eyes open. They might see you having your eyes closed. They might see you sitting in a cave in a mountain in South India, or they may see you a cup of tea in your living room, you know. So you would appear differently to different people depending on your body, mind, depending on your karma, depending on your conditioning, depending on what's happening in your life. But inwardly, there wouldn't be an experience of diversity, of duality. This is why it's non-dual.
And from here, what would be your advice to somebody who's looking for that?
Well, first of all, you don't have to be looking for that if you don't want to. I would encourage people to do what they want to do. Just because I've said there's this thing called Jagrat Sushupti, isn't this amazing? I would say, what is that interests you? You know, for example, the question, who am I? I've come to realize this is who am I is the direct path to liberation. It's the clear path. Bhagavan said it's the direct path. It's the easiest path, he said. He said it's the direct path, meaning it's the quickest path. He
Hmm.
said it's the easiest path. He said it's the sure path. He also said it's the only path.
Hmm.
Again, if you read it, who am I? You'll see he's written it. It doesn't, it's not, it's buried in the text. You see it's the only way. And he says it many times. But So many people think, oh, it, Ramana has said it's the easiest way, it's the sure way, it's the direct way, it's the only way. I better do who am I? And I've realized, and I used to encourage people to do that, and I do, but I've realized a lot of people aren't really interested in who am I. They want liberation, sure. And they read in a book that who am I is the way to liberation. So they oh, I want liberation. Who am I? I've read this text. It says who am I is the way, so I'll do who am I. But they're not actually interested deeply in who they are. You know, they're interested in something else. Maybe they're interested in, you know, meditation or chanting. So now I say to people, yes, who am I is the direct way. Yes, it is the only way too. But it only works if you're interested in it, if you have a connection to it. And you will eventually get a connection to it. How that happens, it differs for everyone. Bhagavan says there's only one way to liberation. This is through self-inquiry. You don't have to call it self-inquiry. You don't even have to know it's called self-inquiry. But that's the only that process that is called self-inquiry is the only way. But everyone, but all the other practices eventually will lead to self-inquiry. He says all the other ways will eventually lead to who am I? You have to eventually ask, if you enjoy chanting, who is doing the chanting? If you enjoy meditation, who is doing the meditation? You have to always come back to yourself ultimately. So most people I've realized are not actually interested genuinely, deeply in who they are. They're interested in experiencing or attaining something outside of them. So I say, listen to the teachings, but follow your heart. This is what I've figured out through teaching. This is where my understanding is now of
Mhm.
this teaching process. I'm still learning about that. So now I'm sort of saying to people, what are you interested in? And I help guide people through that. Because they might say, you know what, actually what I really enjoy doing I enjoy ecstatic dance. I'm like, well, you should do that then. And let's keep in touch. And so they go off and do their ecstatic dance and they have all these wonderful heart openings or emotional healing, or they find a group of people that is perfect for them, you know, might not be perfect for someone else. And then eventually over time, especially if you come to a meeting like my meeting, for example, we're always talking about the teachings. We're always coming back to the teachings. So if you expose your body, mind to the actual or to Bhagavan's teachings, it gets drummed into you how important this who am I is thing is. And through a combination of following your heart and listening to Bhagavan's teachings, we eventually start to genuinely have a real burning desire to know who we are. Whereas initially it's like an empty formula. You're kind of just doing it going through the motions because you think it's the way to get what you want. You're not actually, you're not actually deeply concerned with who you are. Who am I? You know? And that's what I'm seeing at the moment anyway. So I'd say follow your heart, but also hear the teachings, be open to the teachings. And you might be going in different directions, seemingly, but actually you'll come full circle. I think that's what I'm sort of sharing these days.
That's beautiful. Yes, because you kind of need to be ready for it
Mm. Yeah,
and complete all the tasks, all the levels before that readiness is full on.
yeah, yeah. And just to be clear, ready for it, all it means is that you have a desire to do it
Right.
in the
Well,
way I think of it.
yes,
I
ready no
mean,
matter what. I want to see this no matter what. I want to know what
yeah,
I am no matter what. That's for
yeah,
me is the readiness.
yeah,
And
exactly.
if it's on a scale from 1 to 10, it should be 11.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. So, for some people, so the reason I said that is you don't have to necessarily go through steps prior to it. If you already have a burning desire to know yourself, then you're ready.
Yeah, no matter what. Whether it
Exactly.
brings peace, whether it brings suffering. So for
Well,
the lucky ones who live in London, come and to Tom's weekly satsangs. Is that right? It is
Well, you
every
know
week.
what? We have satsangs, we have meetings
Uh-huh.
twice a week, but it's online.
Uh-huh.
And in London, we have meetings once a month. So where we do that, they're also online as well. And some it's quite sometimes people come and visit as well from abroad, and they can so if we time it right, they can come to those monthly meetings, and it's also live streamed as well. But I wouldn't say, I mean, it's funny because some people have, when they come and meet me in person, it's like, oh wow, it's so much better in person. But many people, it's like, oh, it's no different. You know, it's or it might even be a letdown. I don't know. But hopefully not, but it might be. So I just encourage people to come to the online meetings because if you resonate with what I'm sharing, then come on to the online meetings. You can get a really strong transmission um online. It can be so powerful, I think. Um, and many people who come to the meetings say the same. I feel that though. I feel like online is really good.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like why make all the effort to come and see me in person when you can just be in your own home and turn the computer on. Some people are kind of old school and they think that, oh no, I've got to be there with a teacher in person. It's physically better. And for some people, maybe that's true. Um, and some people say the same for me. There's one person I know who never comes to any of the online meetings. They just don't like it, you know, and and they love to see me in person, you know. So I don't know. I think the online ones are really good, but I guess everyone's different.
I agree with this online. Now it's such a beautiful way to come together over vast distances.
Yeah,
And whatever is being transmitted or shared energetically or spiritually, whichever way you want to call it, it's not limited by the computer
exactly.
screen.
It's not limited. I say it's not limited by geography, by time, by space.
So it comes from here, from within. It's just a
Yeah,
resonance. It's not like your presence is being perceived through the screen. No, it's
no,
same
exactly.
one on. On.
Yeah, it's when I say transmission, it's not actually a transmission. Yeah.
Small
It
resonance.
it's a resonance, yeah. So they're actually what's being transmitted is from themselves to themselves. But for many people, they'll feel it's from me, especially like the same way I felt it was from Bhagwan Ramana, And so
Mhm.
I've also come to appreciate that if I'm always banging on about the fact that it's actually from themselves to themselves, for some people that can be an obstacle because for some people they feel it so strongly from me or whoever, maybe from Jesus or from another teacher or from a book. They feel it's from that. And that can actually be useful because it can be useful for them for their psyche to gather around a person or an object. Because that's what happened to me. My energy went towards the form of Ramana. I started um, enjoying thinking about him and worshipping him as a person outside of me, which again was against my non-dual programming, my non-dual teaching programming, because I'd already been seeking for many years, was that you shouldn't conceive of God as being outside of you. Bhagavan Ramana says this as well. He doesn't say you shouldn't conceive of God outside of you. He says the high and no version of God is yourself, which is true. But there can be a stage where you fall in love with um, an ent a s- an apparent entity outside, and that can be very helpful for you. So again, I've learned not to get in the way of people's processes. Ultimately, it's true. It's got nothing. Tom's nothing at the end of the day. Tom's just an empty thing, you know. But temporarily, and I try and make it really clear because I don't want anyone to worship me, actually. It's not very fun being worshipped to me anyway. I don't really like that. But for some people, it can be a part of their process to feel love towards a teacher or something like that. And I don't mind sort of temporarily, well, so far I don't mind. Maybe I will if it becomes troublesome. But so far I don't mind sort of temporarily taking on that role, especially online, because there's a screen, it's less dangerous for them, you know.
What comes to mind is the tuning forks. Tuning forks, they produce very clear signal,
Mm,
right? And by that signal, you can adjust the instrument that is out of tune. So that
yeah,
tuning fork has got a function of bringing the clear signal for self-adjustment,
that's
for
right.
self-correction. So then
Yes,
that form can also ring at the same frequency, at the same sound, the
yes.
same clarity. So yes, these instruments like Ramana, like you, like other teachers, they are doing that service of ringing the clear signal.
That makes sense. Yeah, I've not thought about it like that before. That's what resonance means as well, isn't it?
There's
Well, resonance is very subtly different to that, but yeah, it's the same idea.
the
So imagine
resonance
if
is
you're,
needed for self-correction.
yeah, well, you're talking about, I'm being a bit pedantic here, but you're talking about hearing a clear signal and adjusting to meet that, aren't you? Is that right?
Mhm, mhm,
Resonance is something slightly different. Resonance, say I'm a tuning fork, and say you're a tuning fork, yeah, and say you're a spiritual teacher and I'm a seeker. When you ring yourself as your tuning fork, if let's say I'm a tuning fork and you're a tuning fork, we're the same frequency.
mhm,
This When you ring your tuning fork, it will also make me ring. If
mhm,
you have two tuning forks in the same room, in the
mhm.
same frequency,
Yeah,
if you bash one and ring one, the other
mhm,
one will start to ring as well slightly.
yeah,
So it literally awakens the other dormant tuning fork. That's resonance.
right. Yes. And
So
plus, whatever is in the way of that clear signals can drop, like it
yeah,
cancels the noise.
what do you mean?
I mean, our systems are noisy. Thoughts, beliefs,
Mm,
ideas, feelings,
yeah,
traumas, everything is a noise. It's a lot of noise going on. Thereof, we do not feel that deep silence. We don't know it's
yeah,
there. We know
yeah,
mentally it's there, but we don't know it because of all the noise. But let's say
yes,
somebody comes in with a clarity, with a clear signal of pure love, bliss, being,
yeah,
silence, right?
yeah, yeah.
That
That's right,
silence
exactly.
comes through as that noise is ceases.
I see what you mean. Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
still here, that resonance is still here, but that noise is not letting it be known.
that's
So
correct. Yeah,
when somebody is clear next to you, it, it eats that noise away.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, totally. I totally see what you're saying. With the resonance analogy I'm thinking of, if you're a seeker and you're a tuning fork, and imagine you've never vibrated in your life. Yeah. You're just a still tuning fork, not emitting any sound. And then a teacher who's another tuning fork is emitting this sound. And when you go near that teacher, their vibration makes you vibrate. And for the first time in your life, you feel this vibration because of the vibration of the teacher. So their frequency is sort of transmitted to you, and you resonate with them. So you feel something in yourself that's always been there, that's always been dormant or latent in you. It's awakened through something. You know, this is what I feel what happened to me when I came across Bhagawan in my heart. At first, I thought he was something outside of me. I knew he wasn't because I'd done all the reading and stuff already. But I was in my actual day-to-day experience, I was relating to him as if he was a power outside of me. And through that, my mind first was going towards him, and then it started to settle in itself. And then he sort of metamorphosed from being here to being here. So there's still a duality because before he was there, now he's here. So now I was worshipping him here. And then go into him, and then it's just one. This is kind of what happened to me. And then I didn't like, and all this time I didn't really like the verbal teachings that much. And then afterwards, I started to realize how beautiful these teachings were once the process was near completion and completion. Then I could start to appreciate the verbal teachings more. And even though I share the verbal teachings now, that wasn't my actual, even though I'd read a lot, that wasn't my actual path. So I call that the path of bhakti, devotion, love. That's what my experience is. But because Tom did a lot of reading, he also understands all that stuff as well. Well, not all of it, but he's got the understanding he has.
Well, Tom, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for teaching me about spiders, because I should already know that living in the UK. So that's good. And now I've got the tuning fork thing. I hope I wasn't too fussy on the tuning fork thing.
Oh, no, it's great. It's great to explore together.
But I
And
love the
see
way
the
you
path.
phrased it, with the silence. I totally um, get that too. Yeah.
Mm. So everyone who wants to know more about Tom can click the link below in the description, get to his website. Yeah, and continue sharing the presence.
Thank you. Oh, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, please.
There's a load of free resources on tomdas.com.
Mhm.
There's a recommended reading list of books you can read about. Some are very old books. Some are from the 20th century. Some are contemporary from the 21st century. Almost all of them are free. Some of them you got to buy. None of the money goes to me. It just goes to the people printing the book. So there's a recommended. So I highly recommend people check that out if they're interested. There are also some introductory articles. So on tomdas.com, there's loads and loads of resources there. So I just encourage people, if they want to go there and explore what's on offer.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you everyone who watched, listened. And if you have comments, please. It's always nice to hear your thoughts. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.